coffee.
fine.
Yeah, always got my coffee with me.
All right.
Good
Okay.
evening, everybody, and welcome to the Reeve, the Emotional Awareness live discussion that we have every Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. with a guest. And this evening I have with me lovely guest, Tessa L Richter. So good evening, Tessa. Lovely to have you here.
Hi, Kay. Thanks for having me. I'm
You're
very
very
happy to be here. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, very welcome. Yes, so you and I, we've never spoken before tonight, and I think my viewers get used to the fact that some speakers are people I've known for a while for various reasons, and other people it's like brand new connections. And you know what I love about talking to people on here, absolutely live for the first time ever, is just discovering how much when we go into a conversation on purpose, how much we generally find that all our thoughts and beliefs align, and we're usually on the same agenda, the same mission. And I really love that to come out live on camera. So I'm really looking forward tonight to hearing about your story, and in particular about your book, because you have a book out as well, published author, and it is, I remember now, Our Secret Potential.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you've come into this, and what Our Secret Potential means to you. Where's this come from?
All right. Well, I've always been fascinated by what humans are capable of, and this started fairly early, and also intrigued. When I was around 14 years of age, I was practicing music every day. I later on went on to become a classical musician. But so I remember very clearly that one moment when I thought, how on earth do you compose music like that? It seemed like, as if flying to the moon, like totally beyond anything conceivable.
I'm with
And
you.
so
Yeah.
this has like been a theme all my life, and I've developed my own potential in many different careers. First as a classical musician,
Mm.
there I was interested in performing on stage, stage fright, all the mental things that go on, to be able to perform at that high level
Wow.
internationally. Then I had a second career as a visual artist. Another one as I built my own business with in-house language trainings. And the last 10 years I've been coaching business people like C-level executives,
Oh,
specialists who've lost their jobs, are facing health issues, are in a crisis, leadership training. So basically, I've developed my own potential, and I've always taught and coached. At
wow.
every stage, and one thing I realized was that there are like, besides the tools for developing our potential, there's another aspect, and that is life. So life steps in and nudges you, or sometimes forces you into a different direction, and you
Yes.
suddenly discover that you have a potential you didn't even know you had, and
Mm.
same is true for my clients. So this whole topic, so the book is basically my experience, my whole life, the tools, the philosophy. I explored different states of consciousness. Yeah, I could go on and on and on.
Oh no,
I'm
that's amazing.
fascinated by different cultures who
Yeah.
approach cult and culture together. So it's not, culture is not separate. So there's this like spiritual aspect in culture. I was
Yes.
very
Yeah.
fascinated by that. Um,
Mm. I'm with you.
yeah. So that's like in a nutshell
Wow.
my life.
That, in a nutshell, my word, that is probably one of the most varied careers I've heard of on the show yet. So from classical musician to artist to consecutive level coach, and leadership training. Wow, that is certainly quite a journey. And yeah, I think most people grow up in the corporate world and would desire to move the other way into the arts. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Yes. And if somebody had told me this like 20 years ago, I would have just said you're absolutely bonkers, and it happened organically and at the same time. So and this is what I love about once you discover how life works together, when we start cooperating, what I call cooperating with life, you know.
Yeah.
So when I started giving the German and English, and so language training, basically the in-house training, I had this vision or feeling or wish that I wanted to bring what I had learned in my art, my music, my mind techniques, meditation, etc., to the corporate world. But of course, again, that seemed rather like flying to the moon, another one of those things. And by the way, I did end up composing 3 CDs of my own with my own music. Just
Wow.
like, so that's life took me, like, it took me about 40 years, but I did end up there. So that's why
Yeah.
I really believe in trusting life, even when it looks rotten and bad and as though it's not on your side. It is on your side. I truly believe that.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, and like you say, it's nice to blend worlds as well, because it's not all separate things. Everything is connected, and people in the corporate world need stress relief, and classical music is a great way for relieving stress. So yeah, so tell me, how did you manage to achieve that? Sort of when you say you're doing consecutive level coaching, were you bringing that music aspect into that? How did you do that?
Well, actually, at first, no. So basically, because I was because I moved from I was in the classical music world, and I was an artist, and I was totally in that world, and but I decided I'd done what I wanted to do as a classical musician, and then of course I had to earn my living somehow, you know. So I was this, oh yes, I'm stopping this, but you know, I have to earn a living, and I wasn't selling that many paintings to be able to afford my
Okay.
whole, you know. So languages seemed obvious because I grew up internationally, and so I started doing that. And as a result of, so I went into this business world. I felt terrible because it wasn't my world at all.
Yeah.
But as a result of that, I was then asked to do some what is called spouse coaching for expats. In other words, usually women who come with their husbands
Yes.
from abroad. They get packages paid by the company so they
Oh
feel
wow.
better.
Mm.
And it's about helping them find a meaningful pursuit, basically. So I started
Yeah.
doing this, and I was working with the company, and the senior consultant there said, well, I really think you could be doing, you know, this other type of coaching and consulting. And I thought, oh my God, never ever. But he trusted me. Plus, they needed somebody with English. It was in German, so
Mm.
he said, well, you know, let's just try it. And I went there, and it was just amazing. I suddenly felt like I was pulling out all these, you know, arrows I had in my ready to for whatever I needed.
Yeah.
So what I use most with them is these kind of changing perspective, but also what I call like mindset techniques, which are little meditations, closing your eyes,
Yeah.
visualizing. Um, I talk about self-love. Would you believe it? I had a CFO
Good one.
telling me that he hated himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how the idea of the book came about. I thought, I have all
Mm.
these experiences from, you know, teaching, coaching different types of people, but the topics are always the same. And I myself was quite ill a few years back, and that was like it was after that I really started coaching like this.
Oh wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and and the thing that I realized then, and this is maybe and now we're getting maybe to the actual topic, was I realized I had always followed, you know, my heart, or whatever you want to call it, my passion,
Mm.
my intuition. So I thought, why am I getting sick, you know? And then I realized I'd learned to love others unconditionally, but not myself. It sounds, you
Yeah.
know, it sounds like everybody's talking about it, but it was a very private, very inward realization. You know, I didn't read about it anywhere.
No.
I used the tools that I had developed over the course of those many years. And as a classical musician, you're always confronted with yourself daily. You know, you coach yourself.
Yeah.
So I found that this, you know, loving yourself, loving myself, it has become a daily practice, and is certainly one of the most important aspects, I think, or very, very important aspect, let's put it that way, of
That's
keeping
amazing.
healthy on all levels, emotionally, but physically as well.
Yeah, I think it's amazing because you hear so much more about this now. You know, growing up, like years, even 10, 15 years ago, people didn't seem to talk that much about self-love, but it's become more and more prominent in conversation. And I think it is really important because, you know, we all think it'd be nice for somebody to love us and
Yeah,
love us
exactly,
unconditionally. But
exactly.
if we hate ourselves, why do we expect them to love what we hate? But you're
Absolutely. I
right. We have
totally
to
agree.
start with
Yes, it's
ourselves.
totally
Yeah.
illogical. But the thing is, I think it's, well, in
Mm.
the Western world, at least, we have this like Christian, you know, the Christ, or I think the Christian belief is to love yourself, but not the church necessarily. You
Mm.
know, condemns the body, condemns our vicious thoughts, and, you know, all these things. So we
Yeah.
kind of grow up not trusting ourselves really, or not
Yeah.
trusting that we are enough the way we are, and good
Mm.
enough the way we are, and meant to be the way we are by nature, you know.
Yeah.
um, and I think
I
this
think
is
it's probably,
something.
probably probably expanding on the concept of love, because growing up, love was two people together, you know, fall in love, get married, have a family. That was how we saw love, and anything else was you liked it or you had a passion for it. Um, but yeah, I think it's about expanding that concept of what you love. And one of the things I think I realized over the last year is love isn't even an emotion, it's a connection. And that
Absolutely. And I think it's an
yeah,
even, and I think besides a connection, it's also a decision. I mean, it's
yeah,
not, as you said, it can be an emotion, it can become emotional, but
mm,
it's
yeah,
more expansive somehow. It's more
yeah,
even almost neutral in a certain sense. Like you say, this connection, that if
mm,
you feel that you love somebody, then it immediately connects you together, whether you actually like that person.
mm,
It's like almost doesn't have to be.
yeah. But at the same time, I've realized that when you love somebody and they don't love you in return, that can actually bring different emotions. So love isn't the emotion, it's about how that connection works. So love can be one way, it can be two ways. Some people might declare they love you and you might feel really repulsed by it. So the love is more about how each individual interprets their connection to another person through a car. Men love their cars, for example. Somebody goes out and kicks their car, they're not going to be happy and go, oh, I love you, car. They're going to be like, the anger will come out, because what happens to that connection, I think, is what raises those emotions. But self-love is, again, we're so aggressive to ourselves and self-deprecating, and I think it's about understanding that connection with ourselves and reconnecting with our own body, our own mind, our own, I don't know, inner animal or inner spirits. And yeah, absolutely right. And when we can do it, then we can expect other, or not expect, but we can accept other people into our lives easier. And yeah, lovely. So how did you come to bring all of that round to writing the book?
um well, I mean, that's just one aspect of the book. So my wish was to, like, all these approaches that I'd learned over the course. So the subtitle of the book is A New Approach to Purpose, Performance, and Well-Being in the 21st Century. So there was the experience of performing on stage, which is, most people don't realize, highly stressful if you're a classical musician, because there's
Mm,
such a high level of perfection involved.
yeah.
And that's where I first started, not with self-love, but with seeing myself as perfect in a different way. So in classical music, perfection is a technical perfection. Okay. And then I realized that if I was always striving for this technical perfection, not just me, most people lose that inner connection and that the essence of music, really. Okay. So then I started thinking about there's another type of perfection, and that is the perfection of the soul. And so I really experimented with that in music and with my clients and, teaching. And just all the experiences I had, plus the philosophy I developed as a result of it, like cooperating with life. I just felt I wanted to share it in a way that especially people who are maybe not into all these things, who don't read spiritual things, or listen to classical music, or are into God knows what esoteric, what is sometimes deemed esoteric, but just for normal people, business people who use their brains, mostly the analytical brains, and to write a book that enables them to go from that heady, brainy side into that other side, and that's basically what I've tried to do. The bridge.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing. Like you say, it can be very easy to get into that focus, like you get that attention on something that's really heavy going, and you almost don't want to let it go because you don't want to have to like keep switching how you think. So you kind of get really blinkered on something and just go, and then you end up burning out, I think. So yeah, it's really good to learn these techniques to be able to walk away from that. I know I had to because I worked in an office, corporate office, working for a management team. I was a team assistant to a management team, and it was a very busy, reactive, strategic, very process driven office, and it had to be because of the risks with the engineering environment. And I know that even walking around the office sometimes it was like, oh right, stop, 20 seconds mindfulness. Whether it was stopping looking out the window, drinking a cup of coffee, waiting for the coffee machine, or just waiting for the printer to finish, it would be just stop and take those moments of mindfulness just to be able to just reset and then carry on with the day. It could be so intense that without little strategies and tips like that, I would never have made it through from day to day.
Yes, and then I increasingly got clients now, the last 10 years, who actually also had, burnout. I had a 30-year-old young man come, diagnosed with burnout, and he also wanted to change careers, which is why he ended up coming to me. And then I just basically, the first session, I did a little guided meditation. I listened to him, and at the end of the first session, he said, I was able to breathe for the first time in months. And but then we went on to look at his career and did, career coaching and everything. He switched careers. I enabled him to find what he wanted to do, get the job, and he doesn't have any problems anymore. And this is why I'm here tonight, because for me, I understood this connection. We think of health as something, it's either mental health, then it's in your head, or it's in your emotions, or it's physical health. We don't understand that they're all connected. So if somebody's depressed, there's also a physical element to that. There's an emotional element. It's not just, but if somebody's physically sick, then there's also the mental aspect of it. So it's the way things work together, and that's what I'm interested in. And so if somebody, for instance, finds their purpose, that can help them heal depression, that can help them heal burnout, but it can also help them heal from cancer. I'm not saying it's going to happen every time, but I'm saying it's possible, because by tapping into that potential of who you are meant to be, who you are in essence, you free up all this potential to be, healthy and successful and fulfilled.
Oh, it sounds amazing. It's like everybody wants to be there. I can feel it,
Yeah. So we all, yes.
But yeah, you do hear more and more stories about this now, like people who do go into this really, really positive mindset and embrace life in a completely different way. And like you said, just why's my brain just gone cure? To literally cure ailments that doctors have said they'd never get over. And yeah,
And
mind
that's what
block
I
would be a
find
good one.
so, sorry, yes, sorry. Now that's what I find so fascinating. So
Yeah,
I love reading all these stories
yeah,
about how people performed what we would call miracles, But
yeah,
I
yeah,
honestly believe that we are actually engineered, we're wired to for miracles. We just haven't learned how to use our systems for
no,
that, And so this is my
yeah,
little contribution with my book, and hopefully, talking. And I honestly believe, and especially now we're at the brink of, I think, a real new level of human development.
yeah,
Um, yeah, that is
yeah. And I think people are starting to realize more and more that the energy of the human race is so much more interconnected than we could believe. And I know a lot of people are very spiritual and believe it on a very spiritual level, but it's actually coming into a more of a scientific field as well now. And
absolutely.
I love it when they do experiments about the Earth's energy and how we're all connected around the Earth. And it was two particular examples. I know they could actually measure on a chart, a bit like a seismograph chart, but it was something different. And one of them was the day Princess Diana died, and the other one was the 9/11 towers. And there's this human energetic field around the Earth that spiked on those 2 days. And
Heard
I
about that.
can't think what it
Yes,
was
true,
called, but
true.
yeah. So,
But
if the whole Earth can think one thing on the same day and affect this whole energetic field around the Earth, then on a smaller scale, what can we each do to ourselves, with each other? Like giving somebody a hug is another one, isn't it? When you share positive energy through hugging somebody or even yourself. And like they say, 20 to 30 seconds is actually provides healing benefits. And there's so many fascinating parts to this field. So I think we could be going on till midnight if we if
I
we
totally
really
agree.
dig.
But I really I'm totally with you on that. The interconnectedness, I think that's
Mm,
one of the big things that we haven't even begun to explore. And especially in business, the mindset is so much on competition, on it's either me or you. We don't understand that it's me and you,
mm,
and that we're connected. If I win,
yeah,
you win. If you win, I win. It doesn't work the way we were brought up to believe, that we're
yeah,
separate. And I
yeah,
think that our world is in the state it's in because we think we're separate, and we're not connected. And also, very interesting, I'd read this before, but I read it again recently. Did you know that apples share 40% of their genes with us humans?
no, I didn't. Apples.
Can you believe
Goodness
it? I
me.
mean,
So why can't I eat apples?
um, so I think
That's
we
on my
share
no-go list.
a
But
lot
yeah,
of genes with, so with animals, there's just a very, very tiny amount that actually separates us. But we
yeah, I'm
think of
not
us
surprised.
as being completely separate, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And there is, throughout the planet and the universe, there's so many similarities between humans and animals that we don't even think about on a daily basis. Like every creature that I can think of that's above sea, unless it's an insect, or even an insect to a degree, but every living creature that's a mammal or an egg laying have got their eyes above their nose, above their mouth. And it doesn't go in a different order for anybody or
True,
anything.
true, yes.
So there are like patterns like that are across the universe, and it's patterns that I like to look for. And like you say, you're looking for patterns in all sorts of things, and I'm the same. I look for patterns in emotions, but I look for them in terms of how we interact against a particular color scheme. And so I look for patterns against color emotions. But its patterns are fascinating, and I'm always looking out for new ones.
Ah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
yeah.
That's also an interesting one. That, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, so I still can't believe that you classical music. So in terms, if we were saying to somebody about, okay, they're feeling a bit overwhelmed and a bit burnt out, and they want to go home from work and put on some classical music, what would be your recommendations for choosing something in terms of emotions? If they're feeling a bit sad or feeling a bit angry, what would you recommend
Well,
in terms of?
I think in terms of, it depends how much that person already has listened to classical music and appreciates it, because there's music that is more difficult to get into or to connect with. I think the easiest, and certainly very, very extremely beneficial because it's very structured, is Baroque music. So if you think
Okay.
of Vivaldi, Bach, Handel, these composers, so if you wanted to like calm down, you would take something that has a beat of about 60 per minute, which is a slow
Okay.
moving, what you would call adagio, largo in music, but basically a slow movement. If you wanted something to kind of lift your spirits, you would take a faster movement, you know, something that's a little moving forward, maybe dancey.
Okay.
If
So
you
yeah.
for if you're into classical music, so in the sense of the period, you could listen to Mozart,
Okay.
because it's also it's proven to have very beneficial effects. I think Beethoven as well, but that's more, so that's already more intense. So if you, it depends how much you want to like
Get out.
really,
Yeah.
you know, like get into
Yeah.
it and you know.
Yeah. It's almost like a cleansing feeling when you get the right music and you really let it wash over you and you let that stress go. It is like cleansing, isn't it? And I must admit, I haven't done it for a while with the classical music, but I have at times put it on. You put it on loud. But I think there's a lot of really good modern classical artists as well. Like there's a lot of new stuff coming out. But yeah, some of the brilliant. So thank you, Vivaldi, Handel, um,
Bach, maybe.
Bach. So
Um,
they're really good starter ones. That's a really
yeah,
good
I think
tip.
so.
Yeah.
Maybe Bach is the most complex, but Vivaldi certainly. Um, yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's really good. So that's a great tip for viewers that if they fancy looking up classical music, plus of course Tessa's. We'll have to find a link to your music and put it in the chat
Absolutely,
afterwards.
yes. No, and the thing is, you know, talking about interconnection, um, you know, if we all vibrate at a certain frequency, and
Yeah.
if so if you have like tuning forks, let's say you have two tuning forks, something that
Mm.
vibrates, and you like hit one of them to vibrate, the other one automatically starts vibrating in sync. Okay, and we're the
Yeah.
same way. So if, like you said, if I come into a room, we can all sense the vibes, you know, positive
Mm.
vibes, angry vibes,
Yeah.
fear vibes, whatever. And music is such an easy way to immediately, without thinking, without
Mm.
talking, without having to do anything, you just put on music, we automatically ourselves start vibrating in that frequency.
Yeah.
So if you have the right music, you're doing yourself good, like instantaneously, you know, and changing.
Yes.
You can change your mood. You can change your mental state by listening to the right music. Obviously, you can, if you use certain types of music, it releases emotions. You start crying. Sometimes you want
Don't
that,
fight
sometimes
it.
you don't.
I think that's a good thing is if you feel like that sometimes don't fight it, is it? It's actually enjoy being in a safe, quiet space. And if music is going to bring out those emotions, let them come out. It's happening for a reason. Just sit with it and just let them come. Don't react or act, but just sit there and let those emotions flow. It's really good to do that because I think once you do that, you come through feeling a lot freer the other side. But it's amazing what you're saying about energy and people like sharing each other's energy. And like you say, you walk into a room and you could have a room full of 100 people all happy and jolly, and another person comes in all happy and jolly, and nobody really notices also. But you get one person walk in a room of 100 who's angry, and the room goes silent.
Freezes.
And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
negative emotions are so viral. And like we just said a little while ago with Princess Diana's when she died, bless her, and with the 9/11, the Twin Towers, my goodness, you think about how viral the emotions were then around the entire globe. You know, we already knew about it over here in the UK, about the Twin Towers, before the second tower had even gone down. The world was emotionally on board with that disaster while it was still happening.
I
And
know.
I
I remember that over here in Switzerland. Same thing. Yeah.
yeah. But I think what amazes me is that with emotions, we can share that vibration, that energy, without even actually being near each other. Because if somebody was to type something, we'd still get that emotion from it. You can read a newspaper and you get that emotion from it. You can hear music which is recorded digitally or watch the news and you get that emotion from it without even being near the person or seeing them.
That
You know.
is very interesting. I totally agree. I just had this conversation today with a client who has lost her job, and she's in a bit of a, yeah, it was all very disappointing, you know, losing the job and very difficult. And we finally, I always sensed there was this like resistance to just doing what she needed to do to get a job. And so she finally admitted to these emotions. And I told her that I'd read this once, that a woman who was looking for a job for 2 years, she couldn't get a job, and she went through these phases of feeling positive, you know, and trusting, and then very low. And she said
Yeah.
every time she went down, after a while, she realized there was absolutely no point in applying for a job because she just wouldn't be invited. So she
Oh,
understood that what you just said, that even if you
yeah.
write the same wording, you know, in the letter,
Yeah.
somehow, don't ask me how, people think it's
Mm.
voodoo, but it's true. It
Yeah.
comes across. So if you're
Yeah.
in a good mood, if you're feeling optimistic, if you're feeling upbeat and I really want this job and I can get this,
Mm.
you don't have to write the perfect, you know, it doesn't have to be the perfect wording, but somehow
No.
it comes across. And the same
Yeah.
happens the other way around.
Yeah, you're right.
It's
Absolutely right.
amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
But yeah, say to be able to even just write words on a piece of paper and leave them somewhere and somebody else will pick them up and they'll pick up those emotions, like graffiti left in places and posters on walls and adverts we see all over the place. And we know what social media does when somebody starts ranting on social media and everybody just joins in, even though they wouldn't normally. And people behave differently on social media to what they would in life a lot of the time, not always. Not
And they
always,
don't
but
understand that it has the exact
yeah.
same effect, of course.
Yeah. And I think that's a
Yeah.
really, really important part of emotional awareness is recognizing how you respond to those words and how they affect you. And knowing, you know, we tell teenagers and youngsters these days, well, we've been telling them for years, you know, if the news makes you unhappy, turn the news off. My mum gets frustrated when she starts trying to talk to me about things. And I'm like, I haven't watched the news. Well, how can you know what's going on if you don't watch the news? I don't watch the news because I don't want to know what's going on, mother.
I totally agree with you. I don't watch the news either.
She gets frustrated because I don't know what she's talking about. I said, Lola, yeah, and as long as you're happy watching the news, you watch it. But yeah, it's you know, words are really, really powerful and in how we speak them, how we write them, how we use them. So yeah.
Oh,
And it's like you
absolutely.
said, to connect that with that energy between two people, like sound, that vibration, and then we're saying about that peak that happened around the earth on those disasters. Like you said, there is this massive connection. And I know it goes into realms I'm not going to push into it today, and it's not my expertise, but I have experienced times when things happen and I've picked up on them even though I'm not there and I haven't even seen or heard anything. But that's a whole different conversation for another
I
day.
totally agree. That's what the psychologist Jung called synchronicity.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is another thing. So I'm so into this that I researched all, you know, modern physics as well and modern psychology. But so in terms of quantum physics, like on the smallest level, every particles are connected. So I was brought up that, you know, things happen in a relationship of cause and effect. So if I want a different effect, I need to change the cause. But in fact, we're now finding that things happen synchronistically. They happen at the same time in different places. So they're interconnected, you know, not as one causes the other, but they happen together.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So many different aspects to all of this that we could talk about. It's like easy to sort of lose yourself in them all and go, you know, we could be going around the world for days like this. Perhaps that's another challenge, around the world in 80 days and talk about 80 different doing a 52-week challenge. Maybe I need to do around the world in 80 days, have a speaker from every country and synchronize it all. But yes, but no, it's amazing. And there's so much about emotions I still want to study, and I consider myself a bit of an emotional expert already, but so much to study. It's like, where do you begin? And then there's psychology, there's philosophy, there's leadership and mindset and mindfulness and meditation, and so many different aspects to it. And then all the different religions, like the Hinduism and the monks and the Buddhist monks and things, and so many different methods of achieving the same thing. But I think the main thing is, despite all of time of history of people on Earth, like you said, that synchronicity is something that all of those things have tried to strive towards. They've just not all managed to complete that as one whole agenda at the moment. So we've ended up with quite a different range of religions and cultures and cults and sects and politics and education, and I think all of that's come out of that attempt that somewhere around the globe everybody knows there needs to be this synchronicity, but they're all trying it so many different ways that sometimes it actually pushes us the opposite direction and pushes apart rather than drawing people together.
But I think, well, I honestly believe that we live in a time where now at the moment we're experiencing it in a negative way, how the whole world is connected through the virus. Okay, but I think that the other side of that is that we're understanding this interconnectedness, and I think ultimately it can have a very positive side to it. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people are realizing how on the one hand, how independent people are learning to be over the last year, a lot of people, but also how interdependent people are. And I think that's the biggest one that's come out of 2020.
I agree.
Realizing that you can't just shut the world down and say that's it. Hospitals and schools will stay open, but yeah, hospitals have to have suppliers, and all the suppliers have to have suppliers, and their suppliers have to have suppliers, and it's just like continual cycle, isn't it? Everything, like you say, everything's connected in that way as well. There is just no way of, you know, we all think we're independent, we're one individual in the world, but we're not. We are part of this hive mentality you just cannot break out of. It's almost impossible unless you just go and live in the mountains and live on your own and like 100%.
Even then, you're connected to the land, you know, you cannot.
Yeah.
And I mean, just the fact that we're talking, you know, people are talking online, so many people. I mean, that's also happening much more now than it was before. I think, you know, this interconnectedness. There's one more thing that I would like to talk about, since we're talking about mental health and teenagers, if we have time. I don't know.
Yeah, of course we do. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we've got 20 minutes yet. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know exactly how long we're.
Okay.
Because I've done some projects with teenagers, some artistic projects, and this is something that's very dear to my heart, because I honestly believe that, you know, especially teenagers who may have some, you know, difficult mental health issues, whatever you want to call them, just problems growing up as well, maybe. And I think to support them in expressing creatively can be immensely beneficial. So I had like a young man who was 18, 19. He was in the institution because he had kind of become slightly criminal. and he wanted to publish a rap CD. Now I'm a classical musician, but I was asked to
Right.
be his coach, okay,
Okay.
for this CD, and it was amazing. Like, we came from such different worlds, and at the end we managed to work together. And he came out of
That's
this
amazing.
with less. So I didn't criticize him. I just asked him to reflect on the text that, you know, the text, the rap texts are often very violent
Hmm.
and, you know,
Yeah,
anti
can be.
women,
Yeah.
you know. So I didn't say you shouldn't do that. I just said, are you aware? Can you feel how that is violent? How that, what that does to you?
Hmm.
And, you know, so then he presented the project at school and everything. And then he came over after everything was finished and he said, oh, and by the way, I would never write those texts again.
Bless him. Yeah. Oh, that's
So
amazing.
by
Yeah.
doing something creative with it's less focused on the problem. It's more on the soul level, you know, expressing
Yeah.
who you are in essence, finding ways, whether it's music or I had a young girl who did some comics, you know, drawings, and I really believe that can be extremely beneficial um,
Oh,
to
that's
and
amazing.
yes, and it allows this energy to be focused and out and into the world, and, you know, and become something that is visible, tangible, and it also gets you out of the head. I think a lot of things happen because we're
Hmm.
too in the head, you know, too in this one brain. I think we have
Yeah.
three brains, and the three brains need to be
Yeah.
connected. Um,
Yeah. No, it's funny you say that actually. The brains of it. Yeah, amazing. There's so much going on. Like you say, the head, the heart, and the stomach. Because it's only a couple of years ago I heard about the second brain, and now they're already talking about the third one. I think if they found three, they'll find four more. Because when we think back to how our previous generations seem to have knowledge that we've lost or not understood, they talked about seven chakras. And I think science will keep going until it says there's seven brains. I think
well,
that's
that,
that's my, that's my forward prediction, my personal one.
Um, yes, I agree. I think that maybe those three that I'm talking about are maybe like the main
Yeah.
brains. Um, but did you know that they actually did experiments with people who were able to see with their arms? So this is much even
See.
freakier than we could ever imagine. So we have
Okay.
like a brain, an intelligence. Yes, they did these amazing. So people who had lost their eyesight, and some don't ask me how they did it, but they used like parts of the
Oh,
body to see. So in other words, there is a lot more still possible than we could
wow.
ever imagine.
I heard about
You know,
somebody with echolocation, but not. Yeah.
it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, and these abilities, like, you know, we all know that we can be standing somewhere and we can sense if somebody comes into the room, even if we don't hear it, we don't
Yeah.
see it. There's
Mm,
just this other sense. So
yeah.
we have so much more. I'm convinced that we can, you know, that we're not
Yeah.
using, or not using consciously. I mean, we're using it, yes, all the time, but, you know.
Yeah, no, wow, yeah. Science has got a long way to go yet, but it's amazing this is all coming out in our lifetime and we're seeing it.
I
But
know.
yeah, it's like the horror movies when somebody's blind and they go like that, and then there's an eyeball in their hand, isn't it? And but you always imagine it like that. But yeah, I think a lot of this, what we think as mythology, is based on science of the past that we've forgotten. And I think there's so much that as a human race, we don't know what the previous lives knew. Like some of the constructions around the world. I mean, days when our generations didn't think they could travel across seas, they got very similar constructions all around the earth from like 12,000 years ago. Well, how did they do that? How did they communicate that far all the way around the earth? When you got similar pyramids over in China and Asia and Africa and over in South America. And it's like the world's connected somewhere, because whatever happens at any stage of life, it seems to travel the earth quite quickly, and everybody does the same thing. So coming back to the synchronicities again, just and it's, there's a guy who even found this, like, we consider electricity to be reasonably new, and batteries are a new technology
But they're not.
in the span of lifetime. But actually, even batteries have now been proven to go back over 2,000 years. And there's something called the Baghdad battery. So I love fascinating facts like that. I love little facts like that, and sort of looking back on what humanity was like in the past, because actually we're not that different in terms of what we're like as a whole. As a civilization, we're just different in the technology of today and the knowledge of today. But as a civilization, the behavior is actually not really much different than thousands of years ago. And so many aspects to, say, human life and emotions and awareness. But somewhere in amongst all that, it's still trying, every generation still struggles with this understanding emotions, understanding how to overcome that stress, that depression, that anger, and to just take on all these little tips, tricks, and techniques. And they're so much more talked about now. That it would be really, really lovely to see people really coming through to a whole new era of sort of openness about emotions, and being able to take control of that and say, no matter how bad a day I've had, I'm still going to end it on a good note. I'm still going to make myself feel good, feel self-love. So the work you do, and your books, your music, and everything, is amazing. And we've got to keep having these conversations. We really do have to keep having these conversations with so many people.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, supposedly, we've had a civilization that was also extremely technologically advanced, which was in Atlantis, and then it kind of collapsed. So we don't know, but I think they were very advanced, and maybe even more so than we are now. I don't know. So yes, it's interesting to but I think what was different, I mean, not that I know, I wasn't there, but what was different, it's like way back in ancient times, there was a sense of unity. So there were the tribes were connected with their surroundings. They were part of nature. They saw and they experienced nature themselves as being part of nature. And I think then came this separation in the duality. And I think now we're in a time where perhaps we're coming back to this feeling of unity or awareness of unity. And at the same time, maybe what's different is that we know we're separate and we're not separate and we're connected. So maybe this is like the evolution that's happening, coming from union to duality to a new form of union. I don't know. That's my
I think as history and science and psychology and philosophy and all of that now begin, because I think in the past they've always been seen as very separate subjects, like you say, everything's had this duality. But I think now that they are starting to combine knowledge over time, not necessarily in our lifetime, but over time, it will bring all of that into unison. But it's going to take a long time, because humans are not very on the whole, not very receptive to new ideas and new concepts, and they're not very good at letting go of old traditions and old religions and saying, actually, it served really, really well. But actually, the purpose of it is to bring us all together. And sometimes hanging on to old traditions actually prevents us from moving forward. So just finding that way to get everybody to just focus on themselves, but in the right way. And like you say, going right back to the beginning of the conversation, discovering that self-love and that self-acceptance and self-purpose. And if everybody could find that in the right way.
I think that's where life comes in, and so maybe this whole disaster that we're living through, maybe that's exactly what it's doing. Maybe it's bringing us together in that sense, of I think everybody is realizing, you know, that we can only survive if we survive together, for instance. So I don't know, there's a lot of potential in this situation. And I think also people have, obviously not everybody, but people who are alone a lot now understand the real true importance of self-love, self-care, of you know,
yeah, that's a very good point. And especially with the pandemic and so much loss over the last year or so, there's going to be more and more people finding themselves very lonely. You know, not just through lockdown, but through loss as well. And I must admit, I've been one of those that's been challenged a bit with that. Hence, I've got online and done the live discussions, so I'm not sitting there talking to myself every night of the week, just 6 nights a week. You know, just being able to find those ways to overcome that and work together and help each other. But yeah, that self-love, let's say, bringing that back round into the conversation is so important. And then also, you know, a lot of it is about teenagers and youngsters these days. They're moving out into a world where they've got to discover. So I thought we'd frozen for a minute there. So yeah, they're now trying to discover all this sort of love and friendship as they move out into the world, but also while in lockdown. And I think that's one of the biggest things that causes so many relationship breakups and a lot of domestic abuse, is where they're trying to rely on each other to provide the love that they want, instead of loving themselves and sharing it between them. And I think there's a lot more needs to be shared about that self-love to get people into successful relationships from the beginning, and to get people into happier families, or help mend families, and also repair the relationships between parents and children and parents and teenagers. So there's so much more that self-love achieves than is just repairing your own emotions. It's repairing so many relationships around you as well as at work. It's just, it's like you said, all interconnected. I'm losing my voice. Back to you.
Okay. No, I totally agree. I think we're actually moving into an age where there's like an Indian, South American Toltec culture says that we're moving from an age where we were looking for everything, for love, for success, for acknowledgement, everything outside of ourselves. And we're moving into an age where we look inside of ourselves for all these things. I personally think this is absolutely true. And I think, yeah, I totally agree that if youngsters, if we learned as youngsters, or, you know, the generations that are growing up learned to love and honor themselves. It's also about honoring who you are. It's not about a cheap I like everything I do, I don't care thing. It's about honoring that sacredness inside of us, in our bodies, and who we are, and in connection with the earth. And I think if young people can connect to that, and also that connects them again to their purpose, and that in turn, purpose connects outward. You know, if I have a purpose, I'm not obsessed with how I feel, how I'm doing right now. I'm connected to this greater, whatever, you don't even have to name it, you know. And I think that is also something that, rather than just going after having a job, making money, getting prestige, being able to buy a car, you know, maybe it's more about, who am I in the world? What am I going to contribute once I grow up? Will I be somebody who contributes to growing food so that we can survive? Is it, you know, am I going to create art? What am I going to inspire people? Who am I, you know?
Yeah. And instead of the sort of the more old-fashioned sense of, oh, being a doctor or a surgeon or whatever, but actually being somebody who heals people, and going,
Exactly.
you know, and looking at it in the healing world rather than the profession world. And it's the same job, but it's that mindset that makes a huge difference to how we enjoy life. You know, in the past, there's people who just worked in kitchens, but now it's like people who do catering, who are providing for other people. You know, they're helping to feed people. And it's just so many different ways to look at everything we do. So it is about picking that mindset around your values, and then when you've got the right values, that leads you to the right job. And it's such a journey of discovery. But no, I certainly, you know, from this point of view, we've got a few minutes left, is encouraging parents this week to go and have conversations with teenagers and young adults about what we've spoken about today. Try and have this conversation with them, and talk about how connected the world is, and try and talk through, you know, try and have the conversation. If you can have a real sort of constructive, debatable style conversation about, okay, what would the world be like if you had no connection with anybody, and if you weren't interdependent on other people? For example, we used to say to our children in the morning, you know, about being interdependent. It's like, no, I'm me, I'm just here, I live here. Okay, so well, if you're here and you're not connected with anybody else in the morning, when you get out of bed and you come down and get your breakfast, how else can you get your milk out the fridge? Who looks after the cows? Who milks the cows? Who actually delivers it to the door? Who makes the bottles to put it in? You're not independent. And it's even the little things around you that you pick up that help them to understand they are part of a bigger connection. And it's been just take that conversation to youngsters, and helping them to realize that connection and that interdependence it helps them realize that actually when they find their value and they find their purpose, that has the same connection going outwards the other way, and really powerful. But yeah, absolutely, I'm so pleased we've had this. So Our Secret Potential, your amazing book. Yeah, I can't even begin. I know people out there have got potential beyond what I can even comprehend. And I know at the same time, having conversations like ours help inspire other people to keep growing, to keep learning, to keep exploring the world. And it's really important that we keep having these conversations. So yeah, I've put
Thank
the
you
link to your book in
so
the
much.
chat.
Yes, I
Yeah.
totally agree. I think it's just it's wonderful to be able to talk about these things, because yeah, and hopefully somebody will hear it and be inspired to on their journey. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just trying to find a piece of text I had earlier, because I've got to just announce who next week's speaker is. We have a lady next week. Her name is Adele Wang, and she's agreed to come on and speak next week. And she's a speaker, energy healer and teacher, safe haven healing. So that's next week's speaker. I've actually got quite a good lineup for the next few weeks, actually. So I'll say more about that next week. But we've got some really exciting speakers coming up. Also, myself, I'm joining on a couple of other things this week. I've got a podcast to do on Thursday night and another one on Friday afternoon that I'm doing with other people. And StreamYards, which we come to the audience with every week on this show, I'm actually doing a spotlight with them on Thursday night this week. So I'm appearing on StreamYard with the owners of StreamYard interviewing me, or some of the admin hosts. So that's going to be an interesting one this week. But I am really, really grateful tonight, Tessa, for you having this conversation with me. It's been amazing. And I said at the beginning, it's always amazing when I speak to somebody on camera for the first time ever, to find out, like you said, the synchronicities we have in understanding, even though we all have different experiences and different viewpoints and different angles by which we approach it. But that whole conversation from week to week to week for me just connects so much information. It's really powerful. And I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate being here and talking to you. Thank you too. It was a real pleasure, and I totally agree. I mean, we hadn't met before, but yet it was so easy to talk about all these things. And yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you.
Keep having these conversations with people, you know, even to the viewers. And thank you for watching in tonight. And if you're watching on replay as well, drop comments below. We always love feedback. We always do. And this will be put up on YouTube. I usually put it up the day after, but it might be the day after. This might be Thursday this week, because I've got quite a full day on tomorrow. I'll try and get it up, but my day starts at 6:30 tomorrow morning, so I won't be sitting up late tonight. Lots going on in the business in the background. But no, thank you so much tonight, Tessa, for this. And I have really, really loved the conversation. And I look forward to seeing everybody back at 7 o'clock next Tuesday with Adele Wang with the energy healing. So that'd be amazing as well. So it takes on to that energy level we've been talking about tonight, but taking that conversation onto a whole different level again. So that'd be really interesting. So, well, thank you so much indeed. And we'll see everybody next Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.